On February 8, 2025, a 17-year-old ran 100 meters in 9.99 seconds. That's not the remarkable part. The remarkable part is that he did it in the semi-finals of the Australian All-Schools Championships.
Well, Gout Gout has stunned the athletic world. Right, well, Gout Gout has the athletics world talking. And
Ipswich's sprinting sensation, Gout Gout, has added another title to his belt.
A high school meet with no professional coaching block start, no championship pressure training behind him, and almost no one outside of Queensland who even knew his name. Gout Gout had just become the fastest junior sprinter in Australian history. He broke the national under-18 record that had stood for 31 years. He ran it so fast, so cleanly, and so effortlessly, his form barely disturbed, that the officials checked the equipment twice. The number was real. The kid was real. And what came after? The times, the comparisons, the footage that went so viral it reached the phone of a man named Usain Bolt was something none of them saw coming. Australian sprinting has always lived in a particular kind of shadow. The continent produces world-class swimmers, rugby players, cricketers. But in the shortest, most brutally simple event in athletics, the 100 meters, Australia had never owned the global conversation. The country's all-time record sat at 9.93 seconds, set by Patrick Johnson in 2003. A half-Korean, half-Aboriginal man who ran that time in Mito, Japan, in near-perfect conditions, and then, largely, disappeared from the international narrative. For 2 decades, that number sat untouched. Not because Australian athletes lacked talent, but because sprinting at the elite level requires an almost inhuman convergence of genetics, resources, coaching infrastructure, and timing. Most Australian kids with fast-twitch muscle fibre ended up in rugby league by 16. Gout Gout was not most kids. Born in Brisbane to South Sudanese parents who fled civil war and built a life in Queensland, he grew up in a community where sport was less a pastime than a lifeline. His name, Gout, comes from a South Sudanese tradition. It means something closer to the one who arrives. His family didn't name him for the English language's association with the word. They named him for what the word meant in theirs. He started running seriously at 14. By 15, he was posting times that confused coaches, not because they were world-class yet, but because of what they suggested about his ceiling. His stride length at 16 was already elite. His ground contact time, the fraction of a second a sprinter's foot actually touches the track, was measured at levels that biomechanics coaches associate with professional athletes in their mid-20s. He trained at Mundingbura Athletics Club in Townsville, not exactly the Jamaican High Performance Centre. Not a factory for Olympic medalists. A regional club with good coaches, decent facilities, and a teenager who kept getting faster no matter what the conditions were. By early 2025, the whispers had started. Not globally, just within the narrow, obsessive world of Australian track. The coaches who compare notes at state championships, the statisticians who track junior times like stock prices. They knew something was happening, they just didn't know how to say it out loud yet. Then came February 8th. The Australian All-Schools Championships aren't unknown, but they're not a marquee event on the global athletics calendar either. Television cameras were there, a few hundred fans. The kind of afternoon that matters enormously to the kids on the track and almost no one else. Gout Gout lined up in the semi-final of the boys under 1800 meters wearing his club kit, looking, by every account from people who were present, completely unbothered. Not focused in the way athletes perform focus before big moments. Just present, loose. Like a man about to take a walk who happened to be wearing spikes. The gun went. He ran 9.99 seconds. The crowd didn't immediately understand what they'd witnessed. The time appeared on the board. Someone near the timing area pulled out a phone, then another. Within minutes, the calculation was done. This was the fastest time ever run by an under-18 athlete in Australian history, breaking a record set in 1994. And it wasn't run in a final. It wasn't run chasing someone. It was a semi-final, a warm-up round. He went on to win the final. The footage hit the internet with the specific velocity that only genuine disbelief can generate. Slow-motion clips dissected his mechanics. Former sprinters posted reactions. Athletics accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers shared and reshared a 17-year-old from Townsville who looked like he was running within himself at sub-10 pace. And then, the world started paying attention. Here's what most people watching those clips didn't know. Usain Bolt's coach, Glenn Mills, the man who built the most dominant sprinter in human history, had already been briefed on Gout Gout's development. That's the detail that changes the frame of this entire story. Because it means that before the viral moment, before the record, before the mainstream sports media caught up, the people closest to the science of human speed had already identified this teenager as something requiring serious attention. Bolt himself, watching the footage from wherever he was when it reached him, reportedly said he saw something in the way Gout moved that reminded him of himself at the same age.
Yeah, he's very talented. The times he's running now, and he's really been doing well. That's something that you love to see because you want athletes to do well and you want.
That's not a compliment handed out carelessly. Bolt has watched 1,000 fast teenagers run. He knows what separate category talent looks like from a clip because he spent his teenage years being told he was that. And most of the teenagers he's seen since aren't. The conversation around Gout Gout then split into two directions simultaneously, and they weren't compatible with each other. One direction was pure excitement, the projection game. If he runs 9.99 at 17 as a semi-final, what does 9.7 look like at 23? What does the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics look like? What does a full 4-year development cycle under elite coaching infrastructure produce? Those conversations happened loudly, publicly, with people who know the sport well, and people who know nothing about it. The other direction was caution. Protective, insistent caution. His coaches in Australia pushed back on the narrative almost immediately. They'd seen what happens when a teenage prodigy gets consumed by expectation. The comparisons to Bolt were flattering and dangerous. Bolt didn't fully bloom until 21. He was injury-prone early. He needed years of patient development before he became the thing the world remembers. Gout Gout, at 17, running 9.99, still had a skeleton that hadn't finished forming. Still had muscle-to-frame ratios that changed dramatically between 18 and 22. The body that runs 9.99 at 17 is not the same body that will run his best time. Rushing that body, loading it, racing it too frequently, chasing the hype, could end the story before it begins. The other complicating factor was school. Gout Gout was still in high school. His family was still in Queensland. The offers that started arriving, the training invitations, the management inquiries, the media requests, had to be filtered through the reality of a kid who hadn't finished his education yet and whose parents had very different priorities than viral fame. All of this, the talent, the caution, the hype, the protection, is the actual tension in this story. Not whether he's fast. The tension is whether the world that now knows about him will give him the space to become what his coaches believe he can. That question doesn't have an answer yet. In the months following the record, Gout Gout's team did something unusual in the current sports media environment. They slowed down. He didn't immediately fly to Jamaica. He didn't sign with a major management group for a front-page announcement. He continued training in Australia, continued his schooling, continued working with the coaches who developed him from the beginning. His Athletics Australia Federation was careful about what competitions they selected for him, protecting his development schedule the way you'd protect a rare instrument from the wrong climate. He ran internationally for the first time, representing Australia later in 2025. The times remained extraordinary. The mechanics remained unlike anything most of his competitors had encountered in a junior field. What his story had already done, before any Olympic final, before any world record attempt, before any of the chapters that may still be written, was shift something in Australian athletics. The infrastructure conversation changed. The investment conversation changed. Here was proof, running proof, that the talent existed in this country, that the genetics were there, that what had been missing was visibility and belief, not raw material. More specifically, his existence opened a different conversation about the South Sudanese community in Australia, a diaspora that arrived with almost nothing and has already produced athletes of remarkable caliber across multiple sports. Gout Gout didn't ask to be a symbol, he asked to run fast. But the two things aren't always separate. And Usain Bolt, who ran 9.58 seconds into the permanent record books in Berlin in 2009, a time so fast that some physicists argued it sat near a theoretical ceiling for human performance, said publicly that Gout Gout was worth watching. The fastest human being who ever lived looked at a 17-year-old in Queensland and said, "That one is different." On a February afternoon in Brisbane, under an ordinary athletic track sky, Gout Gout crossed a finish line. The clock read 9.99. An official checked it twice, and somewhere in the narrow, brilliant world of people who understand what fast really means, a door that hadn't been opened in a long time opened just a little wider. The record will get broken. It always does. That's not the story. The story is a 17-year-old who ran a time nobody believed was coming, in a semi-final nobody expected to matter, and made the people who've spent their lives measuring human speed stop what they were doing and look. If you want to be here when the next chapter runs, whenever that is, wherever he runs it, hit subscribe. Because this one I think is only getting started.